Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you are watching this. I'm Reza Fazeli. I'm a research fellow at the Zero Carbon Energy for Asia Pacific Grand Challenge at the Australian National University in Canberra, Australia. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Reza and the Hydrogen Integration for Accelerated Energy Transition Center for the invitation and the opportunity to talk about our research. I will not share my screen. And before I start talking about our research, I would like to talk a little bit about this initiative. So yes, here we go. So yeah, I mentioned that this is the I'm part of the ANU Zero Carbon Energy for the Asia Pacific Grand Challenge initiative, which is trying to look into the ways that Australia can trade renewable energy based on its abundant renewable energy sources with the other countries, particularly Asia Pacific countries. This project includes 6 main projects, and it's a 5-year initiative which was started in 2019. And these projects, as you can see, included the hydrogen fuels program, which is focused on the techno-economic and socio-economic analysis of hydrogen production and to create this knowledge for Australia to become a leading exporter of zero-emission hydrogen. Then we have the Renewable Metal Refining Program, which is focusing on basically creating this high-value export stream in the form of renewable metal refining, with a focus on refining iron ore to produce green steel. The third project is about the renewable energy system, which is basically focusing on understanding the geopolitical and economic and technological drivers for successful trade in renewable electricity. Then we have this project focusing on the First Nations, the indigenous people who and making sure that they will get the benefit from the transition to zero-emission technologies, particularly in the northern part of the country. We have also a project focusing on energy policy and governance in the Asia-Pacific countries, and also another one focusing on regulatory frameworks for the trade and investment programs between Australia and those countries. So back to the research project that I involved with my colleagues, Tom London, Matt Stocks, and Fiona Beck, and we are looking at the dynamics of the transition to renewable hydrogen. But before I begin, I would like to start with the quote from Albert Einstein that talk about the significant problem that we face today cannot be solved with the same level of thinking where we created them. We need new way of thinking and new approaches to be able to solve those issues. And when we are facing this complex problem, without understanding the whole complexity, we might find a solution that can help us to find the breathing moment. But because of the complexity of system, that solution might result into unintended consequences. So basically the idea is that some solution can create a new problem, and that's one of the key messages from this work that I will elaborate more later. And there's this concept of policy resistance, that some of the interventions that you put in the system can be defeated by the response of the system. So instead of focusing on the traditional way of thinking that try to separate the elements of the system to understand the issue, we propose system thinking, which is basically understanding the components and how they interact with each other. So we all see these different graphs about the projection of hydrogen production, hydrogen demand, across different sectors. This is from the IEA, both the announced pledges scenario and the net zero emission scenario. And we can see that the majority of demand is expected to be in refining and the industry. But how that hydrogen is produced is the main question for our project. So basically, there are different pathways for producing low emission hydrogen. So conventionally, it has been through the steam methane reforming of natural gas or gasification of coal. But the idea is that there are significant carbon dioxide associated with that process, and we need to find a way to capture and store that CO2. And which we'll be calling this low emission hydrogen or blue hydrogen. Another way is through the process called electrolysis, which is basically using electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. And if the electricity is provided through renewable sources, we will call this renewable or green hydrogen. So again, the concept of the whole understanding the complexity of the whole system, hydrogen will face this, has these the three main components: the supply side, demand, and the market price, and how they interact with each other is quite important for understanding how this market will evolve from now. So with higher demand, we are expecting the market price to go up. But with the higher market price, we expect the demand to go down because there might be some other alternative solutions that can replace hydrogen. On the other hand, if we have higher market price, will have more investment, so the supply of hydrogen will be higher. On the other hand, with the higher supply, we are expecting the market price to go down because of availability of more supply, and basically the balance of supply and demand will define the market price of the hydrogen. So in this analysis, we looked at three main steps. We tried to look at the demand of hydrogen using logistic function based on the reference price and the minimum cost of hydrogen production from different technologies. Then we looked at the utilization of the existing asset, and we used this merit-based model to select the generation based on their marginal cost. And finally, we have the decision to choose investment mix, which is basically choosing the cheapest technology to invest in. And there might be a situation that some of the existing plants are running at very high cost, so we need to have these elements of replacement as well. So the demand will be increased not only by the unmet demand, which will require more investment, but also the replacement of the existing one, which can create more demand and need for investment. So this is one of the articles that we published focusing on the impact of uncertainties on the transition to renewable hydrogen. So I'm going to talk about it very briefly about the 7 key factors that we consider to be quite important, and we try to assess and identify the most important among these. So as you know, in terms of the cost of hydrogen production, it can be it is driven by the capital cost of electrolyzer. Here we focused only on solar PV, so the capital cost of solar PV and their capacity factor. Also, as we are comparing it with the gray hydrogen, this analysis, we need to look at the price of natural gas as the main driver. The electrical efficiency and stack lifetime of electrolyzer are also 2 important elements. And finally, the discount rate. To conduct this uncertainty analysis, we created this gray area, which is the ranges for these parameters to change over time, and we collect those information from different sources, IEA projections and scenarios, ARENA report, and other databases. And we run this Monte Carlo analysis to look at all variation and possibilities across this, and we run it for 100,000 simulation runs. And on the left, you can see the results without any carbon pricing, and we see that the gray hydrogen will be quite the dominant element even until 2050. But with the carbon pricing, which is consistent with the IEA scenario for limiting the carbon dioxide into 450 ppm, we can see a big significant shift, and we can see that the green hydrogen will start contributing even as soon as 2027, and it can basically take over a little after 2030. So we can clearly see the impact of carbon pricing on the competition, but this is focused on the gray versus green. And in the next study, we looked at the competition between blue and green as well. So we also tried to find out what are the main driving factors and what are the combinations that would be necessary to reach this transition without carbon pricing. And we found out that the capacity factor is the main driver as expected, and it should be above 30% from connecting just to the solar. And then we have the capital cost of electrolyzer, which should be less than $100, $800 per kilowatt, as well as the gas price, which should be quite high because of green hydrogen to become cost competitive. And as you know, during the last few years, the gas price has been skyrocketed. And so basically, we have done a complementary analysis on this and noticed that the green hydrogen, if it was possible to produce at a larger capacity, would become cost competitive already because of the high gas price. So how about the blue versus green? This is basically the graph that most of you have seen probably in terms of the planned production of low emission hydrogen based on the IEA hydrogen projects database. And we see that by 2030, we'll see more investment on blue hydrogen compared to green, while we know that this size of capacity that you can see is like around 1 megaton, a million tons of hydrogen, is not comparable to the demand that is projected to be in the order of the 100 megatons. So it's important to see how that will develop from now. So the questions that we were looking after were how these blue and hydrogen may be deployed over the next decades, and what are the conditions that investments in blue hydrogen might result in early retirement. So again, we try to identify the most important factors in terms of the production cost of green hydrogen. We focused on electrolyzer capital costs, electricity price, and the capacity factor. And for production cost of blue hydrogen, we looked at the capital cost and the gas price. We also looked at 3 trajectories for carbon price based on the IEA World Energy Outlook scenarios. So we created this scenario 3, as you can see, based on 3 levels of production cost, low, mid, high, for both green and blue and those carbon price. So in total, we have 27 scenarios, and we selected a couple to explore what are the implications of each scenario. So here you can see the results for the case that we have these high production cost for green and low production cost for blue. And here you can see as time progresses and we see this growth in the demand, the blue hydrogen production will shift towards the higher capture rate. The lighter blue is this SMR with 56% CCS. The blue one is the 90% CCS, and dark blue is ATR with 95% CCS. We have done, and this is basically driven by how the levelized cost of these technologies compete. And you can see that over time, you see this transition between the technologies. And in this scenario, we can see that the green hydrogen will never become cost competitive on levelized cost basis. On the right-hand side, you can see the situation that we still have this high production cost of green, but the production cost of blue is also high. So first of all, we can see that the demand is slightly lower because the production cost is higher, and we have that incorporated into the model. And also we can see that the green hydrogen will become cost competitive at around 2045, and then it will be basically start to dominate the hydrogen production. And another important element here is this gap between the demand line and the production, which is basically delays due to construction. And we consider 3 years delay for the construction of blue hydrogen plant, and almost half a year for construction of a green hydrogen plant. Here we have a completely different picture because we have this projection for low cost of green hydrogen. And despite the fact that here we have this low cost of blue hydrogen, still green hydrogen will dominate as soon as 2032. And then we can see that if we have this high production cost for blue, it will be even sooner, that's around 2030. So this is quite important to see the wide range of variation could happen in this competition depending on the assumptions. So just to basically wrap up, we are looking in here in this graph into the operation lifetime of blue hydrogen, and we can see on top where we have this high cost of green hydrogen, the production can continue and the production lifetime can be 20 and above 20 years. But when we go to mid cost of green hydrogen and low cost of green hydrogen, the operation lifetime will be significantly reduced. And you can see here we have this at maximum 15 years, we have here at around 10 years, and then here we have some of the cases are less than 5 years. So this is quite important to consider that because this technology, because the cost of green hydrogen can decline rapidly, there is this significant risk for the investment in blue hydrogen, and that cause these plants to run under their much lower lifetime than expected, because most of these are designed for 40 years lifetime. And another implication is that in terms of the carbon budget, we looked into the emissions and fugitive emissions from natural gas associated with the blue hydrogen production. And we will notice that in the case that we have this high cost of green hydrogen, there's this risk that the emission from the blue hydrogen production can get around 2% of 1.5 degree carbon budget, which is quite significant. So we can either face the situation that we have this high cost of green hydrogen and we invest in blue, and we use around 2% of our carbon budget to produce blue hydrogen, or the case that it could be it is driven by the green hydrogen production and the carbon budget is consumed much less compared to the other scenario. So to wrap up, basically we noticed that understanding these uncertainties is a little bit challenging, but very informing, because it helped us to understand the most critical factors, which we found to be the system cost of electrolyzer, the capacity factor, and the gas price. And also in terms of the investment in the blue hydrogen, we noticed that the risk of early retirement is quite significant, and we need to consider that as a major element of consideration for making those decisions. So again, if you make some decisions for some solutions, it can create new problems at the long run, and we might face those assets to become stranded, and we need to bear with those investment consequences. So thank you so much. I'm looking for, I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to hear back from you if you have any questions. I'm happy to be attending some of the follow-up discussions you have. Thank you.